Hello everyone. On the occasion of Literary Festival 2020, I have been kindly invited and it's my pleasure to share my thoughts on the book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by the famous historian Yuval Noah Harari. A little bit about myself. I'm Nikita Hari. I finished my PhD in electrical engineering from University of Cambridge and is currently a scientist and postdoctoral fellow at University of Oxford. We can all agree that the present day world is in complete chaos with belligerent nationalism, technological and political pessimism, unstable democracies, climate crisis, and natural disasters disrupting world order. As we struggle for everyday living, drowned in sea of all these information, it would be a luxury for millions to engage in a meaningful discussion about the future of humanity or even foresee the grand picture with clarity. Yuval points out that in theory anybody can join the debate, but it is very hard to maintain a clear vision. This book is an investigation into the current state of affairs of our society, the grand challenges in the form of 21 lessons. I will try and walk you through this book, taking snippets that I hope will stimulate thinking and raises further questions about our understanding of the world that we have created. The biggest achievement of our times has been to do with technology. Technology is a revolution that we rely upon to offer a vision for a brighter future. Though they were initially hailed as a liberating force, today they are known for invading privacy, spreading propaganda, and undermining democracies. With several technologies in play at once, the result is widespread techno pessimism. As we all know, technology in itself has no agency. It is the choices people make about it that make the world. This book begins by closely studying the ramifications of technology. According to the author, the first lesson of our times has been that of disillusion. The rise of Donald Trump, illiberal democracies, and downright dictatorships has caused the liberal story that celebrated the values of the power of liberty, of free will, of globalization for peace and prosperity for all is like a lost cause. And millions of liberals across the globe see this as a failure of history, marking the end of civilization. As we talk about technological disruptions, as common people, the biggest lesson that 21st century has had to offer to them is about work. Nobody has any idea how the job market will look like 20 years from now. With the co-influence of infotech and biotech leading to individual human jobs being replaced by an integrated network with the advantages of connectivity and updatability, there's going to be a mass extinction of mundane jobs, creation of new jobs, and continuous evolution of careers, leading to a life of endless upheavals. Which leads us to the third lesson about human liberty, the notion that all authority ultimately stems from the free will of individual humans expressed in their feelings, desires, and choices. This authority is unfortunately shifting from individual freedom to big data algorithms. So we are all becoming tiny chips inside a giant data processing system that nobody really comprehends. The next lesson, which is a creation of this, is inequality. Unequal societies, all wealth and power will be concentrated with tech elites, and we might not just suffer from exploitation, but something far more sinister, that is irrelevance. Not just about certain classes, but entire countries and continents could become irrelevant on the face of Earth. All this boils down to ownership of data, which is a $1 billion question. For those who own the data will indeed own the future. Hence, the need to have proper policies, solutions, and mechanisms in place. Engineers, entrepreneurs, politicians, philosophers, and lawyers from across the globe need to join forces. And what is stopping them? The author sheds light on the political challenges that impede this international cooperation. Community, civilization, nationalism, and religion, according to him, are dividing humans into hostile camps, and these are the next four lessons. The fifth lesson, that is community, the socio political upheaval of our times, resulted in a disintegration of human communities, which Zuckerberg tried to recreate through FB. First, explicit platform using AI for centrally planned social engineering on an astronomical scale. While humankind is forming communities online, there is a clash of civilizations between West and Islamic civilization on the other hand, and a nationalistic wave sweeping over much of the world. Are we to believe that world leaders are using this nationalism populism as an escapist indulgence, or is it going to be this perfect recipe for disaster? Can nuclear wars, climate changes, and technological disruptions be solved from a local perspective? Doesn't it require a global and cosmic perspective? With that narrative, we move on to this major lesson of immigration, which has posed unprecedented challenges and come to dominate global politics with intense disagreements across that humans will need to overcome these deep conflicts and fears that destabilizes the world around us, is the author's conclusion. This current sense of danger is not just fueled by our next lesson, which is terrorism, but by a more important lesson, the Third World War, the possibility of it, which cannot be ignored. It is because, as the author rightly points out, we can never ever underestimate the power of human stupidity. Religious and cultural tensions are made worse by this grandiose feeling of my religion and culture being the most important in the world. We all should be aware of our true place in the world, according to Yuval. As for him, the 12th lesson is so about humility, the understanding that you are not the center of the world. And logically, the 13th lesson is about God, to not take his name in vain. Whether you believe or not, it is dysfunctional if any kind of belief in God incites violence and conflicts. So, what we need right now are strong fundamental values, and that leads us on to the 14th lesson, which is all about secularism. The author stresses that it should not be a negative indoctrination that teaches kids not to believe in God, whereas it should be about wisdom, empathy, kindness, and compassion, and willingness to admit mistakes and blind spots. As we grapple with all these issues, we delve deep into individuals. And the 15th lesson is about ignorance, which is one of the biggest lessons that this century has taught not just common citizens, but world leaders and CEOs, is that we will all know even less about technology, economic currents, and political dynamics that shape the world. This allows us to go into the next lesson, the 16th one, about justice, which is outdated as of now. We are struggling to understand the web of relation between hundreds of intersecting groups from across the globe. And that makes us wonder about the next lesson, the 17th one, of post truth. We have learned that fake news lasts forever, so it is our responsibility to invest time and effort in getting reliable information, verifying our sources, and reading relevant scientific literature. As a scientist, I am deeply impressed when Yuval points out that the scientific community shouldn't think silence is neutral. It is supporting the status quo. They should communicate to general public through skillful use of art and fiction. He argues that from a political perspective, a good science fiction can play a very important role in shaping people's views of the world, and hence, science fiction is also a big lesson of this century. But the reality is that many such fictions out there are so divorced from scientific realities. So, how do we survive this age of bewilderment? Resilience is key, according to the author, and he concludes with his three closing lessons, the 19th one on education, the 20th on meditation, and the 21st on meaning. According to him, we need to educate our future generation to have mental flexibility and emotional balance. As an engineer, researcher, technocrat, and academic, I firmly believe that education is one of the biggest lessons, and we need to teach our kids to be emotionally intelligent, to be compassionate, to be able to work in collaboration, so that they will continually skill upgrade and reinvent themselves in this ever changing world. We need to ensure that we are molding human beings who are more human than ever in this era of artificial intelligence. Also, it is highly important to reinvent and re engineer our current educational system so that science, arts, and humanities can coexist. I foresee a world where a student thinks about what a computer should do rather than about what it can do without any boundaries on ethics and morality. As we are all constantly in search for the meaning of life, our personal identities and social systems are built on top of stories. And the author wants us to know that we are not just a story. And so he ends with the book with his final lesson, which is about meditation, the 21st one, which is all about observation. He thinks this will give us focus and clarity to understand our minds before the algorithms makes our mind up for us. In conclusion, this book looks at the major forces that shape societies all over the world and that are likely to influence the future of our planet as a whole. If the future of humanity is decided in our absence because we are busy with our everyday lives, the author wants us to know that you and I will not be exempt from the consequences. This is very unfair, but history has always been unfair, and that is the point that the author is trying to make. Philosophy, religion, and science, he says, are all running out of time. People have been debating the meaning of life from time immemorial, and he wants this debate to stop at some point. With artificial intelligence and biotechnology giving humanity the power to reshape and re engineer life, somebody has to decide how to use this power. Philosophers might be patient people, but engineers being far less patient and investors the least patient of all. With this incredible power to engineer life around, Yuval wants us to realize that market forces will not wait 1,000 years for us to come up with an answer. So it is up to us to rise to the call of times, to understand and to acknowledge that personal is political. This global dimension of our personal life, according to Yuval, means that it is more important than ever to uncover our religious and political biases, our racial and gender privileges, and our unwitting complicity in institutional oppression. Thank you all. Thank you very much.